Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Strengthening Families National Webinar, our networking webinar that we do each month. This month we are focusing on building family economic mobility, and I'm very excited about the resources that we're going to share today. So I'll start out with a little bit of housekeeping. This is a monthly webinar that anyone is invited to who's using the Protective Factors Framework or coordinating Strengthening Families efforts at whatever level that might be. I'm Kaylin O'Connor from the Center for the Study of Social Policy, and we co-host these with our partners at the Children's Trust Fund Alliance. Each month we coordinate a topic and a guest speaker, and we always welcome your suggestions, and we welcome volunteers for topics or speakers that would be interesting to our network. So please contact me if you have suggestions for that. Also, to let you know that the recordings and materials from past webinars are posted on a Google site that the Alliance maintains. So you can always go there to find a webinar that you missed, or to find the recording or slides to share with someone who you think should have heard it. And I'll also point out that today we do have the slides for the webinar already loaded as a handout within the webinar. So if you click on the handouts part of your panel, you can download a PDF of the slides if you want to take notes on those or just to have to share with others. So those are already there for you, but they will also be posted once the recording is ready on that Google site. Okay, I see a quick question. I have a couple notes from people saying they can't hear. So if anyone can hear me, please type that in to the question box, because I'm concerned that no one can hear me. Oh, others can. Okay, so two people said they can't. Martha, I'm wondering if you could respond to these folks, and I'm realizing I need to make that possible. Sorry, folks, just a moment here.
I will be glad to, Kaylin. I just don't see their question.
I just made you an organizer, Martha, so I think you should be able to see it now. Sorry about that. Thank you. So we'll deal with those technical issues. Thanks to everyone who typed in that you can hear me. That's a moment of minor panic. So getting back to our upcoming webinars, as I said, this is a monthly webinar. We do it on the second Thursday of each month at this time. And on March 12th, we'll be hearing about legal partnering for child and family health, which a paper came out late last year, and now we'll be bringing it to our Strengthening Families audience. So I hope that many of you will be able to join us for that, to think about all the different ways that legal partners can help us resolve challenges that families are facing and improve their well-being overall. On April 9th, we'll be hearing about the Flourishing Families curriculum that home visitors are using in Arizona with parents to talk about protective factors. Very excited to bring you that. And then just mark your calendar for the second Thursday of each month coming up, and we'll announce the topics as they get closer. You can always find the upcoming webinar on that Google site that I mentioned earlier, and on the CSSP.org page about upcoming events. We list the webinars there as they're coming up. And if you subscribe to our newsletter, which is probably how you heard about this webinar, you will always see those updates once a month with that information. Checking in on our technical challenges. And I'm going to keep us going, because I think Martha's on it. Thank you. All right, so for today, we are going to share some updates from CSSP, some updates from the Children's Trust Fund Alliance, from Lucretia Rose, and then we will go to our guest presenters, Charlene Harper Brown and Cassie Russell, who are going to talk about the Building Family Economic Mobility Toolkit. So first of all, my updates from CSSP. I've talked about this a couple times on previous webinars, but some of you may not have heard that, and we do have new news about this. So there's a number of partners at the local level within the Strengthening Families National Network who have been talking about the idea of community protective factors, or how we're doing work at the community level to create the conditions where children and families can thrive. So we've put together a survey, and we would love to hear about what you're doing in that area. And even if it's that's something I've also been thinking about, and you want to just respond and let us know your thoughts, or if it's something you're actively working on and you have resources to share. We're very curious about how folks are connecting that to your Strengthening Families work. If you're using the Strengthening Families protective factors at the community level, we want to hear what that looks like and how you're doing that. And this is the beginning of a conversation. We are planning to do a literature review, so we do want to know what resources you would recommend that we include in that. And the link is here on your screen. I will put it in the chat box in a moment, but you will also see that coming out by email and in newsletters, because we're going to try to blanket the field so that we get a lot of responses on that survey. Also, just a heads up that in the coming months, I will be reaching out to all of the state leads. So for every state that's in dark blue on this map, we have a list of 1 to 4 people who are the state leads for strengthening families work in the state. And I will be coming to you soon to update your information that we have about the national network and about what you're doing in each state. I'm saying this mostly because some of you are in states that are light blue or white, and that means that your state, if it's light blue, we know there's some state level strengthening families work going on, but the state has not joined the network. If it's a white state, we're not aware of state level strengthening families work going on. So if you think that your state should be part of the network and isn't, please contact me. We'd love to bring you in. It's a free and low commitment membership, but it just means that we gather some information about how you're using strengthening families, and then we make sure that you're in the loop. And when people reach out from a state asking me something about training or implementation, I can send them to the right people in the state if we have those state leads listed. So please let me know if your state is not in the network and you would like to be, and if you already are and you're a state lead, you'll be hearing from me soon. Also wanted to remind you all that in October, we have a conference coming up, Together for Families. This year, it is going to be in Seattle, co-hosted by the National Family Support Network, CSSP, the City of Seattle Human Services Department, Be Strong Families, and Families Canada. So we will have a nice contingent of folks attending from Canada, and hopefully some sessions that we can all learn from how they do family support in Canada. Should be exciting. And we will also have a track of content all about strengthening families and how it's being implemented. So keep an eye out, because soon we will be releasing a call for proposals for folks who want to do a session. We'll also be recruiting people to be on the review committees for each of the tracks of the conference. I wanted to share that our partner, Dr. Bob Sagi, who has presented on this webinar a few times, has a new website up for his HOPE project, which is Healthy Outcomes from Positive Experiences. A lot of people talk about HOPE balancing ACEs or HOPE conquering ACEs, and HOPE is a framework to think about how we know that positive experiences in childhood influence adult outcomes and how those interact with the adverse childhood experiences or ACEs. So the website is up now, positiveexperience.org. I encourage you to check it out, and there will be more coming from Dr. Sagi and that project over the course of the year. Finally, I wanted to share a couple other resources from CSSP that have come out recently. I'm not going to talk at length about them, but just to point out that you might want to check out our website, and that you might want to subscribe to other newsletters, not just Strengthening Families, to find out about this other work. So Alexandra Citron did a webinar in October about leveraging the Family First Prevention Services Act to support young children. I think that would be of interest to many of you, and the webinar recording is on our website. If you just go to our website and search for FFPSA, you will find it. We also had a report come out in December called The Evidence Decision Makers Want, which is based on interviews with decision makers in the areas of child welfare and, I believe, youth employment, but really asking them what kind of evidence they rely on, what kind of evidence they wish was available. Really interesting for those of us who try to make a case for decision makers in areas like this or related to it. So check that report out. And just this week, we released a paper called The Racist Roots of Work Requirements. A really fascinating paper about the history of requiring people to work a certain number of hours in order to earn public benefits. That is a hot topic right now in both federal budget and a lot of state legislatures. So if you want to understand better where those ideas come from and why we might need to mobilize against them, please do look at that paper. And those are all available at cssp.org. You can use the search function. If there's something you want to find that you can't, send me an email and I'll help you figure it out. All right, with that, I want to hand off to Lucretia Rose, who is a parent leader consultant and co-chair of the Alliance National Parent Partnership Council in West Virginia. She's located in West Virginia doing this national work. Lucretia, take it away.
Thank you, Kaylin. I'm so excited to be here with you guys today and be giving you the updates from the Children's Trust Fund Alliance. So like Kaylin said, my name is Lucretia Rose, and I'm part of the Alliance National Parent Partnership Council, and we serve as a consultant to the Children's Trust Fund Alliance. And I didn't know if you knew, but I wanted to bring to your attention that February is Parent Leadership Month. And I'm really excited about that. So as part of our celebration, the Alliance National Parent Partnership Council did a webinar actually 2 days ago to celebrate National Parent Leadership Month. And so today I just wanted to give you a few of those resources that you can use from the Alliance to honor rockstar parents in your community. Next slide, please. One of those resources is a fillable form that you can adapt with your own logo and personalize with the name of a parent. There are 3 different certificates that are available for download, and they are a really, really nice way to honor parent leaders in your community. In addition to the certificate, featured on the next slide, you will see some of our tools that we have developed over time. And we debuted on our webinar. Specifically, this one here that you see is called our Parent Acrostic tool, and it digs into what partnering with parents really looks like. And from that tool, we have developed a set of small memes that you can share on social media that take each one of the letters in the acrostic tool, and you can display things based on those little memes. They're really nice because they are you see them here on napkins or notebooks with a cup of coffee, and they dig into tiny tidbits of information of the larger component. So if you are fortunate enough to join us for the webinar, we thank you for being there, and you know that you can download those tools on ctfalliance.org underneath the parent or partnership with parents tab underneath the parent voice. And if you weren't able to join us, that's okay. You can still go there and download those things. But even more importantly, we'd like to invite you to join us for our next webinar, and it will be on May 26, 2020 at 1 p.m. Eastern. And it's from the Need to Know series of the Partnership Academy that the ANPPC has created. And so you can register there today. And Kaylin, do you mind if we put that into the chat box in case folks want to register for that following today's webinar?
Oh, please do.
So, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for having me here, and I'm really excited about Parent Leadership Month, and I hope you take the opportunity to check out our tools and download those certificates to honor parent leaders in your community. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucretia. All right. We are going to get to our main topic for today, which is building family economic mobility. I'm very pleased to welcome my colleague, Charlene Harper Brown, who is also a senior associate at the Center for the Study of Social Policy, and Cassie Russell, who has been working with her in the National Center on Parent, Family, and Community Engagement to develop these materials. So I'm going to hand it off to the two of you, and I'm excited to hear what you're going to share.
Thank you, Kaylin, very much. We can go to the next slide. As Kaylin said, I am with CSSP, but one of the projects that I work on is the National Center on Parent, Family, Community Engagement, which is actually a project of the Brazelton Touch Points Center in collaboration with Child Care Aware of America, CSSP, and Child Trends. Now, this project is jointly administered by the Office of Head Start and the Office of Child Care. The purpose of this center is to develop resources and provide training and technical assistance that addresses the needs of early childhood programs and systems that serve low-income families with young children 0 to 5. And one of the major needs of families, as we all know, is financial security. As I mentioned, this National Center is administered primarily by Head Start, And so I just want to just say how this connects to Head Start's history. Recall that Head Start was established in 1965 as a war on poverty program. So it has long recognized, Head Start has long recognized the importance of family financial security on children's learning and development. Now, in 2007, a new federal act was established that was called Improving Head Start for School Readiness Act. This act amended the definition of family literacy services that was also already in the charge to Head Start. And they amended that family literacy services to include financial literacy. This amendment then illustrated that Head Start had a commitment and a recognition of the importance of a family's financial knowledge and economic mobility on their well-being. So in 2011, the Office of Head Start developed an outcome-based parent, family, and community engagement framework that's seen on the next slide. Can we go to the next slide? I want to show this image.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little difficulty, but I'm getting there. There we go.
Okay. Well, here you are. Now, when you look at the blue column, you can see that the first of the 7 family outcomes is family well-being, which is achieved when all families are safe, healthy, and have increased financial security. So one of the activities of the National Center is to provide training and technical assistance related to building the family's economic mobility. You might be asking, well, how is all this connected to the Strengthening Families Protective Factors? And if we can go to the next slide, you probably assume, and you would be right in assuming, that helping families to build economic mobility is directly related to the protective factor that we all call concrete support in times of need. But I submit that it's also related to all of the protective families factors as well. For example, when parents' financial knowledge increases, they are able to begin to believe and understand how their economic conditions can change just by increasing their financial knowledge. They are able to then call on their inner strength, their resilience to take positive actions, including identifying and mobilizing their social connections and social supports, such that they can begin to see pathways out and up of their current economic conditions and up from there. This can help reduce the stresses on parents, which supports more nurturing parent-child interactions that ultimately support social and emotional growth in both the parent and the child. Now, I say all this with the caveat, with knowing that helping families to build economic mobility and to build their protective families factors not only requires focusing on the individual parents and family, but also requires addressing community conditions and characteristics and putting in place policies and systems that support families' ability to build their economic mobility. So this is not just about the individual, it's about all levels of the social ecology. So why is supporting parents and building their economic mobility so important? Well, the next slide shows some of the research conclusions related to poverty, economic mobility, and children and families' outcomes. Poverty during early childhood can affect developmental outcomes across the lifespan, such as poverty has been connected to lower academic achievement, lower rates of adult employment, and less earning power family earning power in the long run. In contrast, research has shown a positive impact for children when their parents have access to financial capability services, and that other research has shown that increasing and stabilizing family income is related to improved child behaviors and improved mental health in both adults and children. So the National Center, if we look at the next slide, the National Center talks about a journey toward financial well-being. And that journey includes going from financial literacy to financial capability to financial security, and then ultimately to financial well-being. And I want to just define what these are just briefly. Financial literacy refers to assisting families with gaining knowledge about financial topics and issues. But while financial knowledge is incredibly important for all families regardless of income, financial education alone is simply not enough. And so we want skills and access. So that's what financial capability is. Means not only having the knowledge or the literacy to effectively manage financial resources, but also having the skills and access to financial products and services. Then above that level is control over your day-to-day and month-to-month finances. That's financial security. Financial security also involves being able to absorb a financial shock, like a job loss or medical emergency in the future. Financial security gives you some level of peace of mind when you feel you aren't worried about your income being enough to cover your expenses. And then ultimately and ideally, we try to achieve financial well-being, which refers to not only being financially secure, but also having a sense of a freedom of choice, so to speak, both in the present and in the future, being able to enjoy some aspects of life and being on track to meet whatever financial goals you've set for yourself. So preparing programs to support families in engaging in the processes that move them along this continuum is what the National Center initiative called Building Foundations for Economic Mobility is all about. And one of the products of this initiative is what we are calling the Financial Economic Mobility Toolkit. I want to hand it off, this discussion off to Cassie Russell, who is the main content developer of the toolkit. Cassie has a wealth of knowledge and experience working with community-based programs in supporting families to build their financial capabilities. So Cassie, take it over.
Thank you, Charlene, and thank you so much to Strengthening Families and the Children's Trust Fund Alliance for inviting us to share with you today, and of course for all of you for taking the time to be here. As Charlene said, my name is Cassie, and I was part of the team that developed the toolkit that we're going to explore today. The toolkit was created for Head Start and Early Head Start to support programmatic efforts to partner with families on their goals for financial capability, education, and employment, and also to really focus on setting program goals and developing a strategy from the beginning when you're interested in expanding or undertaking for the first time efforts related to economic mobility. It's really a tool that builds off family strengths, and we really want this to be an opportunity to partner with families using their strengths and resiliency to move them forward along the economic continuum. So on the next slide, we'll see that the toolkit highlights research and promising practices and explores opportunities to partner with families on their goal. And it's all tied to the parent, family, and community engagement framework because as Charlene was saying, we know that economic mobility is a key aspect of family well-being and definitely ties to those protective factors, and we're going to talk about that more as we move forward. So the toolkit can be used in a variety of ways that you can see on the next slide. We really want this to be a tool to help you reflect on your program's current efforts and think about how to move forward. The toolkit can be used by Head Start teachers, family support workers, program leadership, family leaders, community members, and I know many of you don't work in Head Start programs, and that's just fine. The toolkit can really be used in a variety of settings, but of course we were focused on Head Start and Early Head Start. After you think about what you're already doing, you'll want to learn more about topics, tools, and strategies that can help you with the approach you've decided to take. And then finally, we want you all to share the knowledge and findings from this development tool that we'll talk about, to request more support, And then later we'll also talk about a webinar series that anyone is welcome to join, because we know that there's so much knowledge in the room and we really want to create opportunities for people to engage with each other around this content. So the toolkit is organized into two parts that you can see on the next slide. The first section is a program planning and professional development tool. And this is really centered around a 5-year program planning that Head Start and Early Head Start engages in. In the nonprofit context, when people might think of a strategic plan or a departmental plan, and this is really thinking about how you can integrate economic mobility into some of the goals that you're already working on, and also provides an opportunity to learn from families about their interests, goals, strengths, needs, and all that good stuff. And then the second section really transitions to more technical content, so looking at some key topics, and we'll go through all of those today. On the next slide, you can see that throughout the toolkit, there are resources for action. So the toolkit is a long document. You can go through in order, that's fine, but you can also search. So maybe you're working with a parent and they have some questions about credit. You can access the toolkit to look up some basic information and then use the resources for action to find more in-depth information. So these blue icons are throughout. You can find the toolkit on eClick, which is the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center, and then you can search Economic Mobility Toolkit for Head Start and Early Head Start, and that's where you can also find all the resources for action in a document with clickable links. So on the next slide, we really just wanted to start by talking about goal setting. I know that all of you are really familiar in partnering with families in a strengths-based way, but we didn't really address that in this toolkit because the Head Start community already has this wonderful resource, the family partnership process. And so we just want to remind people that that's always there if you're thinking about goal setting more generally. And I see that someone shared the link to the toolkit, so thank you. So now we're going to take a look at that program planning tool in part 1. So if you go to the next slide, and then actually the next one. So as I mentioned briefly before, the tool can really help programs and specific workers. I think this can be a really useful tool when you're thinking about your own professional development. Maybe you are working in a setting where a lot of parents are engaging in career and technical education, and you want to learn more so that you can partner with them effectively on those career goals. Those are things that you can really identify, how to move forward personally, and the program as well. And also to think about resources in the community. And we'll talk a lot about that as we move forward. So on the next page, you'll see the 5 steps of the toolkit. And we are actually going to go through each of those right now. If we go to the next slide, we'll see step 1. So the first thing is to really think about whether your program has economic mobility related goals or objectives. Oftentimes I'll hear people say, no, that's not a core aspect of what we do, but economic mobility is a very broad field. If you're referring families to free text preparation, that's connected to economic mobility. If you're providing WIC referrals, or doing anything related to college, career, housing stability, homelessness prevention, all of those things are really tied to economic mobility and stability. So you would think about those things here. And then in the next step, you'll want to identify information that you already have about families' goals. So of course, we know that, families have to be very gracious and share so much of their lives with us. And so thinking about where we already have this information and assessments and intake documents, when you're looking at the community conditions that Charlene was talking about, can you access information from the census or local city data that could be helpful in helping you make the case about economic mobility goals for the folks that you're partnering with? And then on the next step. It's just a place to record the goals that families identified. We really want to make sure that when we're offering something, it's meeting people where they're at and being responsive to what they're interested in. If you do a family survey and everybody says they want a session on credit, and instead you have a session on tax time, you might not get that attendance, and that tends to be a miss. So we want to avoid that. And then in step 4, you want to make a decision about your process. So you want to think about any organizations you're already working with that could help folks with their economic mobility goals. It's really important you don't have to do it all. Your program does not need to be the answer for everything. There are lots of great resources. Even if I've worked in some very rural areas, there's some great free online tools from the FDIC and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and they're actually quite interactive. So if you have access to reliable internet, that's certainly an option, but also thinking about maybe community colleges often have financial initiatives, local financial institutions. You want to make sure that you're vetting the information that's being shared, and hopefully it not being used as a sales opportunity, but a lot of financial institutions will come do presentations for free because they're interested in getting CRA credit for their sort of governing body. So there's lots of opportunities to bring in others in this work as well. And then in the last section, you want to make a plan. So you'll start by thinking of key takeaways and observations, and then areas for further learning and exploration, which are really going to be your next steps. So we also really wanted to highlight that it's okay for this to be a slower process and to really do it in an intentional way. I think the tool is also a great opportunity to engage families in group settings. So thinking about the social connectedness that we know is a protective factor, and really doing focus groups, or, when you get ready to implement some things, doing things in a group setting or a buddy setting. And there's lots of research that demonstrates that peer-to-peer learning around financial coaching is really has a much higher uptake, and people tend to get a lot more out of it. So thinking about how it's an opportunity for families to really act as leaders as well. So now we'll go to part 2, which are the key topics. So there are 2 main sections, and amongst those, there are 8 key topics. So the first main section is partnering with families to build their financial capability. And then the second main section is partnering with families to reach their education and employment goals. So while we divvied this up for the ease of the reader, we know that education and employment goals are really critical to financial capability, because often people are undertaking education or career changes in order to increase their wages or earning potential. And so they're separated here, but they're really, really interconnected. So on the next page, we'll talk about each financial capability key topic. So the first topic is financial education, coaching, and counseling. And that's where you can learn about the nuances of the nuances and differences between financial education, coaching, and counseling. As Charlene was talking about sort of that spectrum of financial literacy, that's really a traditional transfer of knowledge financial education model, whereas coaching is more of an individual partnership model, and counseling is an individual model, but it's still quite directive. So it provides information about each of those approaches, tools for professional development related to those approaches, and ideas for how you can decide what might be the best approach for your setting. The second financial capability key topic is accessing safe and affordable financial products. So in this key topic, we take a look at federally insured bank accounts. So looking at checking and savings options that we know can reduce fees and provide families with access to necessary services like depositing a paycheck or receiving benefits electronically. And this provides a lot of good information. And I should say that in each key topic at the end, there's a section that really talks about, your next steps and gives 3 to 5 ideas of how you could get started. The third section is building credit and managing debt, which is everyone's favorite or least favorite. And in this topic, we look at credit scores and reports. So really breaking down the percentages that go into a credit score, what's on a credit report, why does it matter, how to safely get access to free credit reports, and how to connect families to information they may need when making financial decisions. So we know that credit and debt can come up a lot when people are applying for loans. Maybe a family is applying for an auto loan, or even just looking for an apartment. So thinking about accounts and collections, bankruptcy, and those sorts of things, and how it could impact other goals as well. Our fourth key topic is building wealth. So looking at incentivized savings and asset ownership programs. So those are programs like children's development accounts where parents and their children can both engage in saving for education and career training after high school. And also looking at things like home ownership programs, business development programs. So while, again, this is in the financial capability section, a lot of that asset ownership could also really be tied to career and education goals. But there are definitely those resources out there, so it can be an important tool for any of you, but also for the families that you're working with. And then last, we look at accessing federal and state benefits, so making sure people know what federal and state benefits they may qualify for. Especially, we just did a webinar on tax time, really thinking about opportunities to publicize the earned income tax credit, the child care tax credit. We know that these are big anti-poverty programs that people might be overlooking, but thinking beyond that, holistically about SNAP and WIC and other supports that can really ensure that families have their baseline needs met. So now we'll transition to looking at education and employment key topics. So there are 3 education and employment key topics. The first is accessing workforce development and job training programs. So in that, we really look at workforce development boards, how you can get connected to your local workforce development board, job training programs. So looking at resources that are available throughout the U.S. that really can help folks in person with resume, job clubs. So again, looking at that social connectedness and giving people an opportunity to work on goals in a group setting, which I know some people love groups and some people are more introverted. But there are definitely some options as people are looking for job training programs. And then the second key topic is identifying career pathways. So career pathways or laddering is a very common thing where maybe somebody starts as a store clerk, then they become a sales lead, then a manager of that store, and then the assistant regional manager. It's very popular in medical settings. So we're seeing a lot of people becoming a CNA, and then an LPN, and then an RN, and then a BSN, and then an MSN, or adding things on like being a respiratory therapist or becoming a nurse midwife to really build on those skills. So it's a really important opportunity for families to think about, if I take this career step, how can I continue to earn money while I also continue to build skills for the future? And then lastly, we look at accessing apprenticeship opportunities. So apprenticeship opportunities offer on-the-job training that's often paid for in-demand fields that offers an industry-recognized credential. So this is often common with welding, things like that, where it's more on-the-job training. It's also very common in the automotive industry, but we're seeing more and more folks sort of adopt an apprenticeship model. So in Head Start, it's certainly, there are some apprenticeship opportunities for those looking to become Head Start teachers. So on the next slide, we'll see some key takeaways. And here we just wanted to say, please don't shy away from having a money conversation because you have debt or you're struggling with your own budget or you feel like you shouldn't have bought something or you have student loans. You don't have to be perfect to have a money conversation. And while you don't need to be perfect, you can still learn more. So the slides are available, but if you look at the toolkit and you go to that online website that was shared in the chat, you can see the list of resources to really access where to get that background information. As you learn, apply it to your own life. We really want to make sure, especially in Head Start, that teachers are taking care of themselves and thinking about how they can apply any information to their own goals. I think that's a really awesome thing when you can sort of model just as parents are modeling for their children. These are some of the things that I'm doing. What are you doing? Let's learn together as we do this. And then just programs don't have to do it alone. So like I said earlier, your program doesn't have to be the answer for everything. Make referrals or set up a partnership. Again, being mindful of people's time and the way that people like to receive information. There are so many tools available online. There are so many free apps if people have smartphones or have access to one. Libraries are also a really great source of information. There's actually some libraries that have grants to offer some financial information, but really making sure that people have access to information in a variety of ways. And then this last step is specific to Head Start, but thinking about how anti-poverty work might be part of your mission. So in Head Start, as Charlene mentioned, it is really part of our mission, but my guess is that it's probably part of yours too. So next, we just wanted to talk about some resources. So you can check out all of the past Building Foundations for Economic Mobility webinars on eClick again. So there's a bit.ly to that. And they're organized by topics, so you can search by what you're looking for. You can also sign up for our future webinars. So we have one once a quarter. We just had our tax time webinar, but the slide should be up in about a month. So you can access that if you have folks working on tax-related goals. And then our next webinar will actually be in early summer, and we'll be looking at working with different types of financial institutions. So similar to that key topic about accessing safe and affordable financial products. And so now I think I just wanted to open it up for questions and discussion.
Thank you so much, Cassie and Charlene. This was really great information. We have had a couple questions typed in to the chat box or to the question box. So I will read you the question and you can answer it, and I'll encourage other folks to go ahead and type in a question, or if you are somewhere where you can be unmuted and speak your question, just raise your hand and I can unmute you. So let me pull up those questions. Catherine Landfield had first a question about the financial capability key topics. She asked, do you have info specifically related to the different ways that discrimination, particularly racial, play roles in each of these areas? I'm thinking, for example, of banks having programs that are very difficult for low-income people to access, or the lack of access to fair credit by Black and brown folks. So can you address that, or can you say whether the tools and resources address those aspects of discrimination?
Yes, so we do actually talk about it specifically in the Accessing Safe and Affordable Financial Products. I think it's really important. There's often a lot of emotion or guilt and shame when we're having money conversations, and it's really important, as Charlene was stating, to sort of recognize community factors, and that certainly, racism, sexism, homophobia, ableism, a lot of that is ingrained in our laws and can really impact people's ability to access certain things. So we definitely want to recognize that. There are some great tools depending on what information you're looking for. The SHED is a tool from the FDIC, the Survey of Household Economic Decision Making. This last year, when it came out, they really looked at correlating answers to questions to race and ethnicity and different locations to see how that impacted outcomes for folks. NAACP has a great financial education initiative. And then Prosperity Now just came out with a toolkit for how to talk about race in an economic mobility context.
Great, thank you. And Catherine, if you had a follow-up question, go ahead and type it in. I see Catherine typed in another question. We'll come back to that one because first we have one that came in from Leslie McAllister, who said, does the toolkit include information or at least considerations around the benefits cliff? I know that many families I've worked with have had to pass on certain opportunities because it would mean a greater loss of support than they could make up through a little bit higher income.
Yes, absolutely. So we actually have a whole section on the benefits cliff because, again, knowledge is really important. And so working with families as they're thinking about decisions and, okay, if I take this job, if I move up 25 cents, will I lose $200 here? What would I have to get to really have that not negatively impact my family? So there's lots of chatter around that right now. So if you do a quick Google search, there are some things, I'm not going to go into details, but there's lots of information about asset limits right now. So it's an exciting time, but we definitely know that that's a barrier and specifically have a call out box so that people aren't putting people at risk when they're having these conversations.
Great, thank you. All right, we have another question. This is from Karen Broadnax asking, is this initiative new to the Head Start programs or how long have they been using this model with the families?
So it's not new. That we're in our 5th year of the project. So you can actually see some webinars that go back some time and then we've revisited some. So it's been happening. There are definitely some great programs that are really taking a lot of initiative, partnering with other agencies to offer tax programs or home ownership programs and information, partnering with their local community colleges. And so if you go to that site and look at the past webinars, most of them feature a program example, so you'll be able to get a good idea of what people in the field are really doing to take on this work.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question that Catherine Landfield had entered. Asking about the advocacy, asking about the anti-poverty part of the mission. She said, another angle I'm curious about is using advocacy to transform the systems and policy that the poor are impacted by. Is that an area for us to encourage our clients to become engaged in to the extent they can, since anti-poverty work is part of our mission?
So I certainly think there's a lot of opportunities for parent leadership and parent engagement. And I think that's all we can really go into that in the specific role that we're in. But I definitely think, as we've said, there are definitely systems that impact people's ability to access things or not, and that's a huge part of this work. It's just not what we're specifically addressing through the tool.
Right. And while the National Center on Parent, Family, and Community Engagement can't encourage advocacy or Head Start programs can't, some of you are working in not federally funded programs and may have a little more leeway. So I think that is an important piece.
Yes.
I can say that.
Yes, thank you. Sorry to be cryptic. I'm trying to walk the line.
If you don't have those kind of limitations.
Kaylin.
Yes. Darlene, yes.
I think we need to acknowledge though that bringing this tool and this information to parents and actually to the workers in the programs as well, all the staff in the program as well, is an advocacy. It's an act of advocacy. And so I while we might not be able to do something at certain levels, I think there are different levels of advocacy. We might not be able to promote certain kinds of things, but just sharing this information, partnering with people, with organizations that will support building family financial economic mobility, it is an act of advocacy itself. And their parents are more knowledgeable, and they can go to these places and question how they are being treated because they have gained this knowledge. That's an act of advocacy too. So all of this is that.
Thank
in my
you.
mind.
I think that's a really good point. Yes, raising awareness is a really critical step, and giving people the information they need to ask the right questions. And then in some cases, taking that on to really tackle a policy would be fantastic. We've got another question from Liza Rivera asking whether these tools are available in Spanish.
So right now they're only available in English, and I should state that this isn't a tool to use directly with parents. So it's staff, and then the resources for action, most of those tools are available in English and Spanish. If you're looking for tools in other languages, I would suggest checking out the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. They have a bunch of great resources. They're free to download. They will also ship them to you for free. And most of their tools are actually available in a variety of languages. Most of them are English and Spanish, but they also have some other languages available. And then the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, they also have the same thing, again, where you can download or get free tools shipped to you. So I can add that link in, and you can filter by what language you need the tools in.
Oh, well, that's a great resource to share. Thank you. I had no idea that those were available and could be shipped for free and everything.
Yes,
great.
save your printing budget.
All right, we've got another question here from Beverly Griffin asking, has it been discussed to supply access to proper attire for new positions attained?
Oh, that's interesting. I know there are definitely a lot of local initiatives for that, like Dress for Success or those types of organizations. So I would suggest doing a local search. But one of the things is that sometimes the asset ownership programs or the career pathways programs, they might have supportive services like providing bus passes, or I know I worked in a program where we could pay for a uniform or an interview outfit. So really looking at your local resources for that, since it's pretty specific to location.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other questions. I would take a moment to just ask Cassie and Charlene if there's any other thoughts that occurred to you as you heard what questions were coming up in the conversation here.
I think just to underscore that although this tool was developed, for Head Start programs, it's for any program. And, Kathy has provided lots of links that anyone can go to download. So it's just simply not limited to Head Start programs.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really glad that we can make this available, or that you all have made it available, and we can share it out with our network, because I think a lot of programs could make use of different aspects of this toolkit or even the whole thing. Thank you very much. I don't see any further questions coming in. I want to stall a little bit in case someone is typing frantically and it hasn't come through yet. So if you're typing, do it, hit send. And I will take a moment to thank our presenters again, Charlene Harper-Brown and Cassie Russell. This has been really helpful. I think our participants have all walked away with something that they can use right away or think about how to work into their program, and that's really valuable. Also, thanks to Lucretia Rose for presenting on behalf of the Children's Trust Fund Alliance, and for Martha Reeder for being on the line, helping with people sort out their audio issues, and all the other work that you do, Martha. Thank you very much. So thanks everyone for joining us today. It doesn't look like any other questions got typed in, so I think we can wrap it up and give everybody a couple minutes back in their day. And I hope everyone has a great evening, and we will talk again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Kaylin.